10 years. 10 years of shared dreams, inside jokes. 10 years of thinking you know someone, really know them. And it all came apart with the buzz of a phone that wasn't hers. It was a Tuesday, just a completely normal day, until I reached into her gym bag for my keys and my fingers hit cold, unfamiliar glass. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted, because in that single moment, I just knew that everything I believed about our life together was about to be erased. Before that Tuesday, if you'd asked me to describe my marriage to Clara, I would have said it was solid, effortless. We were that couple, the one our friends pointed to, the ones who made it look easy. We met in our early 20s, a classic story. A chance meeting in a crowded bookstore. I was reaching for the last copy of a book I had to read, and so was she. Our hands touched, a little jolt of electricity, and that was it. History. Our first few years were a beautiful mess. We lived in a tiny apartment where the city noise was our constant soundtrack. We painted the walls ourselves, getting more paint on the floor than on the walls, and we'd just lie there, laughing until it hurt, dreaming about the future. We didn't have money, but we were rich in the way that actually matters. We had each other. Every little win, a promotion at my architecture firm, her first article getting published, was a shared victory. Every setback was a weight we carried together, which always made it feel lighter. I loved the way she saw the world. Clara was a journalist with this bottomless curiosity about people and their stories. She could talk to anyone and make them feel like they were the only person in the room. It's one of the first things that made me fall for her. I was quieter, more of an observer. I built things out of steel and glass, while she built bridges between people with words. We were different, but we just fit. I was her anchor. She gave me wings. Our wedding wasn't some huge event. It was small, in a garden, with just our closest family and friends. I remember watching her walk towards me, the sun in her hair, and feeling this sense of certainty so deep it felt like it was settling into my bones. This was my person, my forever. In our vows, we didn't promise perfection. We promised to be each other's constant, to always find our way back, no matter what. For 10 years, I truly believed we kept that promise. Life fell into this comfortable, beautiful rhythm. We bought a house, adopted a scruffy dog named Walter, and filled our home with books and laughter. Weekends were for farmers markets, long walks with Walter, and lazy Sunday mornings in bed with the paper and coffee. We had our little rituals, the note she'd always leave on the counter if she left before I woke up, the tea I'd make her every single night. These were the tiny threads that wove our marriage together, making it feel strong, impenetrable. Of course, we argued. What couple doesn't? We'd bicker about whose turn it was to do the dishes or what movie to watch. But they were just tiny squalls on a big calm ocean. We never went to bed angry. That was our rule. We'd talk it out, even if we didn't want to, until we could fall asleep holding hands. Communication, we thought, was our superpower. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams, work frustrations, or so I thought. Looking back, was I just naive? Was I so blinded by the life I wanted that I couldn't see what was real? Maybe. But love makes you trust. And trust was the foundation of everything. I never felt a reason to question her. When she said she was out with friends, I believed her. When she had to work late, I'd have dinner waiting for her. In 10 years, not once did a sliver of doubt ever cross my mind. She was Clara, my Clara. The idea of her living a secret life was as crazy as the sun rising in the west. It was an impossibility, but I was about to find out that our universe had secrets. And that perfect decade, the life I treasured, wasn't built on solid ground. It was built on a fault line that was about to rip everything apart. The day it all fell apart started so ridiculously normal. A crisp Tuesday in October, leaves were turning that fiery red Clara loved so much. I had a huge deadline at work, a presentation I'd been prepping for weeks, so my mind was just a mess of blueprints and client demands. I got home a little late, feeling that bone-deep end-of-day exhaustion. Clara was at her evening yoga class, a new thing she'd started a few months ago, said it helped her de-stress. I was all for it, proud that she was taking time for herself. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the click-clack of Walter's nails on the hardwood as he followed me around. I dropped my briefcase, loosened my tie, and went to the kitchen for some water. That's when I saw her gym bag on the kitchen island. That was weird. She always drops it by the back door. Her car key was sitting right on top, and my keys, I realized with a sigh, were in the jacket I'd left in my car. I had to run to the store for milk for our morning coffee, a little ritual I didn't want to break. "Just grabbing your keys, honey," I said to the empty room, a habit you get into after a decade. I reached into her bag, feeling around for the jingle of her keychain. I pushed past her water bottle, a towel, and then I felt it. It wasn't her keys. It was a rectangle of smooth, cold glass, too thin to be her wallet. My first thought was innocent. She must have grabbed someone else's phone by mistake at the gym. But as my fingers closed around it, this cold, heavy feeling washed over me. It was a gut feeling, an alarm bell I hadn't heard in 10 years. I pulled it out. It was a smartphone, a model I didn't recognize, in a plain dark gray case. This was not her phone. Her phone was rose gold in a bright yellow case with a picture of Walter on the lock screen. I knew her phone like the back of my hand. This wasn't it. For a long moment, I just stood there in our kitchen, staring at this alien thing. My heart started hammering against my ribs. My mind was scrambling, trying to find a logical reason. A work phone? But her company didn't give out phones. A friend asked her to hold it? Then why was it hidden deep in her bag? I pressed the side button. The screen lit up, and my breath caught in my throat. The wallpaper wasn't some default pattern. It was a photo of a sunset over a beach I'd never seen before. No notifications, no missed calls, just blank, eerily blank. My hand was shaking as I set the phone down on the granite countertop. The cold stone felt solid in a world that had just tilted sideways, and then the emotions hit me: confusion, anger, and a deep, sickening fear. It felt like finding a muddy footprint in your bedroom, the terrifying realization that an intruder has been in your safe space. This phone was an intruder. It didn't belong in our life, in our home. The shock was physical. It made me dizzy. This was a secret. And secrets that require a second phone aren't small. This felt like a conspiracy against me, against us. After a decade of what I thought was absolute trust, finding this phone felt like a declaration of war. My first impulse was to throw the phone against the floor, smash it, and pretend I never saw it. But I couldn't. The need to know was a physical ache that drowned out every other thought. This little black rectangle held answers, and I was desperate for them, no matter how much they were going to hurt. Then I heard her car in the driveway. Panic shot through me. I snatched the phone, my movements clumsy and loud, and shoved it deep into my pocket. The weight of it against my leg was a constant, sickening reminder. When she walked in, smiling, flushed from yoga, I had to force my face into a mask of normalcy. "Hey, you're home," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips felt cool. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Or was I just seeing that now? Had it always been that way? "Yeah, long day," I mumbled. My own voice sounded strange to me. The rest of the evening was an exercise in deception, a part I'd never played. We made dinner, our bodies moving in that familiar kitchen dance. We talked about our days. It was all meaningless chatter, lines from a play. Every word she said, I picked apart. Was she telling the truth? Was that a slight hesitation? That hypervigilance they talk about? It had already started. My trust was a dead thing, and I was compulsively poking at it. Later on the couch, watching some dumb show, the phone in my pocket felt like it weighed a ton. Clara curled up against me, her head on my shoulder, just like any other night. But tonight, her touch felt wrong. Her presence, my greatest comfort, was now a source of dread. I could feel a chasm opening between us. After she fell asleep, I just lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe. The same sound that had soothed me for 10 years now sounded like the breathing of a stranger. My heart was pounding. This was it. I slipped out of bed, went to my home office, and quietly closed the door. I sat at my desk and took out the phone. My hands were clammy. This felt like a huge betrayal of her privacy, a line I'd sworn I'd never cross. But she'd already crossed it. The phone was proof. My need to know outweighed the guilt. I turned it on. The beach sunset mocked me. Enter passcode. 6 empty circles stood between me and the truth. My mind went blank. Where do you even start? Her birthday? Incorrect. Our anniversary? Incorrect. My birthday? Incorrect. I tried every number that meant something to us. Our first address. The day we got Walter. Nothing. With every failed attempt, the hope that this was all a big misunderstanding died a little more. The fact that the password had nothing to do with us was a gut punch on its own. This world was designed to keep me out. An hour passed. Then 2. I felt this helpless, frantic anger building. I was about to give up when a memory surfaced. From years ago, we were talking about our childhoods, and she told me about her first dog, a golden retriever named Jasper. She adored that dog. It was a total long shot. Ancient history. But what else did I have? The phone vibrated. It unlocked. I just stared. I was in. A wave of nausea hit me. Part of me screamed to lock it, put it back, and forget everything. But it was too late. The abyss had opened, and I had to look. The home screen was simple. Messages, photos, email, a couple of apps I didn't recognize. My blood ran cold. I tapped on the photos first. It seemed safest. The first few were harmless. Selfies of Clara in her car, pictures of food, city skylines. I kept scrolling, further and further back, and then I saw him. It was a picture of Clara, laughing, her head thrown back in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her arm was linked with a man's. He was turned slightly away, but smiling. They were on a balcony with a bottle of wine between them. It was so intimate. My stomach twisted into a knot. I kept scrolling. Another photo, at a concert, his arm tight around her waist. Another, on a hike, their faces close, flushed and happy. Then the one that broke me. A selfie, in a hotel room. They were in bathrobes. She was kissing his cheek, and the man was looking right at the camera, a smug little smile on his face. And I knew him. It was David, a family friend. He'd moved out to the West Coast 5 or 6 years ago. We'd had him over for dinner before he left. I liked him. I remembered Clara being sad he was moving. Now I knew why. The betrayal wasn't just hers. This wasn't some random guy. This was a man who had been in our home, eaten at our table, and shaken my hand. The shock was so complete it felt like the floor just disappeared from under me. The world shrank to the size of that screen. The air in my office felt thick, hard to breathe. Every photo was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. I scrolled through years of them, pictures from work conferences in cities she told me she hated, a weekend at a lake cabin, the same weekend she was supposedly on a silent retreat for an article, a ski trip to Colorado when she was visiting her sick aunt. It was all there. A meticulously documented history of a second life, a whole other relationship, thriving in the shadows. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I'd stumbled into a movie about someone else. The woman in these pictures was a stranger, vibrant, reckless, alive. The quiet, steady Clara I came home to was just a role she played. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I backed out of the photos, my heart pounding. I needed to see the words. I tapped on the messages. The conversation at the top was with David, no last name. I opened it. The most recent message was from that afternoon. Him, thinking of you, counting down the days until next month. Her, me too. Can't come soon enough. Today was rough. Need to see you. The casual intimacy, it made me want to be sick. I started scrolling up. Days, weeks, months, years. The sheer volume of it was staggering. They talked all day, every day. Good morning texts, good night texts, inside jokes. And then the words. I love you more than anything, she had texted him just last week. You are my soulmate, he'd replied. Always have been. Soulmate. The word was a physical blow. She called me that on our wedding day. Seeing it here, written to him, felt like she was spitting on my most sacred memory. I kept digging, like an archaeologist in the ruins of my own life. They talked about me. I was M, sometimes just him, an obstacle, a problem to be managed. M has that big presentation on Friday, so he'll be working late all week. The house will be ours Thursday night, she wrote a few months back. I remembered that week. I was so stressed, and she had been so supportive, making my favorite dinners, telling me how proud she was. Now I knew it was all an act to keep me busy while she was planning to bring him into our home, our bed. The deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a calculated, long-term affair. 7 years. For 7 of our 10 years of marriage, I had been living a complete lie. The trust I thought was our foundation was just sand. Then I found the emails, flight and hotel confirmations under a fake name, and financial statements, a credit card I'd never heard of. She was spending thousands on this other life. But the final soul-crushing blow was in the separate calendar app. It was filled with entries. Meeting with D, call with D, and then 6 months from now, a 2-word entry on a Saturday that made my blood run cold. Tell Mark. And underneath it, a note. Lease signed for the apartment. Time to start over. They had a plan. An exit strategy. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning on leaving me. The last 7 years weren't an affair, they were a transition. And I was the last to know. The shock finally gave way to a cold, hollow clarity. This wasn't something you fix. This was an ending that had been written years ago. The woman I loved didn't exist. Maybe she never had. The grief was suffocating. I was mourning my wife, but I was also mourning a decade of my life. 10 years of memories, all of them now poisoned. The betrayal was so total, it felt like it was erasing me. I just sat there in the dark, the phone's light on my face, a silent witness to the complete demolition of my world. I have no idea how long I sat there, just staring. Time had stopped. The only reality was the crushing weight of what I'd found. My first thought was pure rage. I wanted to storm into our bedroom, rip the covers off, and just scream. I wanted to hear the phone shatter against the wall, a perfect mirror for my own splintered heart. But as the first shockwave passed, it was replaced by a cold, hollow emptiness. The anger was there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was buried under layers of grief. What was the point of screaming? What could she possibly say that would undo 7 years of lies? I walked back into our bedroom and stood over the bed, looking at her sleeping. So peaceful. One arm was flung over to my side, reaching for someone who wasn't really there. The woman I had promised my life to was a complete stranger. I didn't wake her. I went downstairs and sat on the couch in the dark, clutching that phone. I just waited. I watched the dawn creep in, lighting up the living room that once felt like my sanctuary, and now felt like a stage. Every photo on the mantel, every piece of furniture, felt like a prop in a play about a happy marriage. A play where I was the fool. Around 7 a.m., I heard her footsteps on the stairs. She came into the room tying her robe, a sleepy smile on her face. "You're up early," she said. The smile died the second she saw my face. The moment she saw the phone in my hand, there was no confusion in her eyes. No, "What's that?" No questions, just recognition, and then resignation. In that one silent look, she confessed everything. Her face just crumpled. The color drained away, and she seemed to shrink, as if the lies were the only thing that had been holding her up. I didn't say a word. I just held up the phone. It was all the accusation I needed. She sank onto the bottom step of the staircase and buried her face in her hands. A sob, raw and ugly, tore out of her. It wasn't a cry for forgiveness. It was the sound of her world finally coming down. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard, filled with a decade of unspoken truths. "Mark," she finally whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what, Clara?" I asked. My voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the voice of a man with nothing left to lose. "Are you sorry you did it? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" She looked up, her face a mess of tears. I don't know, she whispered, and the honesty of that simple, terrible answer hurt more than any lie she could have possibly told. The conversation that followed wasn't a fight. There was no yelling. It was worse. It was an autopsy of a dead marriage. I asked questions in that same flat voice, and she answered, her voice barely audible. How long? I asked, even though I already knew. 7 years, she said, staring at the floor. David? Our family friend? She flinched. Yes. Was any of it real? It was the one question that had been screaming in my head all night. Any of the last 10 years? Yes, she insisted, her eyes pleading. The beginning was so real, and parts of it. I do love you, Mark. I'm not the person you think I am. That's what finally broke me. No, I said, the anger finally cracking through. You're not. The person I thought you were wouldn't live a double life. The person I married wouldn't lie to my face every single day for 7 years. The person I loved wouldn't be planning her escape while I was planning our future. The trust wasn't just broken, it had been ground into dust. It was crystal clear there was no coming back from this. This wasn't a crisis to be fixed. It was a conclusion. It was the final, painful scene of a story she wrote years ago. I was just the last person to read it. The days that followed are a blur of pain and paperwork. There were no dramatic pleas for a second chance. The discovery was too absolute, the betrayal too complete. There was nothing to negotiate. We were just two strangers living in the wreckage of a life. The decision to separate was never spoken. It just settled in the air between us. She was gone within a week. Watching her pack was surreal. She sorted a decade of our life into two piles. Things that were ours and things that were just hers. It was a brutal, physical summary of her deception. Once she left, the silence was deafening. Every room was a ghost. I saw her in her favorite chair, heard her laugh in the kitchen, felt the empty space in our bed. The loneliness was an ocean, and I was drowning. The grief wasn't just for my wife, but for the man I used to be, the happy, trusting guy who believed in the life he'd built. Rebuilding isn't a straight line. It's slow and messy. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, paralyzed by it all. I second-guessed every memory, every smile, every "I love you." My own past felt like a story someone else wrote. My confidence was shattered. If I could be that wrong about my own marriage, how could I trust my judgment about anything? Healing started not with forgiveness, but with acceptance. Accepting that the marriage I loved was a lie for 7 years. Accepting that her choices were about her own brokenness, not about my worth. The journey isn't about learning to trust someone else again. It's about the slow, painful process of learning to trust myself again. It meant sitting with the pain without letting it swallow me whole. It meant finding comfort in small, real things. Long walks with Walter, my loyal, honest companion. Reconnecting with friends. Pouring myself into my work. Creating buildings with foundations that wouldn't crumble. It meant going to therapy and learning how to talk about my own grief and anger. I have no idea what the future holds. The thought of trusting someone that completely again feels impossible right now. The scar from this is deep. It's part of my story now. If you've ever been through a betrayal that changed everything, I encourage you to share your story in the comments. Your journey could be exactly what someone else needs to find their way through the dark. Sharing reminds us that we're not alone in our pain. And if these stories mean something to you, subscribe for more true stories about love, loss, and the incredible strength it takes to heal. The truth, I've learned, can be a brutal, devastating thing. But it's always better than a beautiful lie. Finding that second phone was the end of my marriage. It was the end of life as I knew it. But it was also a beginning, the start of a painful but necessary journey back to myself. A journey toward a future built not on illusions, but on the solid, unbreakable ground of what is real.